Okay, so that's the training stuff. Let's actually get to what this looks like with a kid. For my second study, what I wanted to do was take one of the trainees, assign her a family, send her out there and, cross everything that I could cross and hope that it went well. I actually did a little bit more than crossing fingers, but, The primary participant in this study was a boy that we're calling Kieran. He was 8 years old as he entered the study, profoundly deaf, also diagnosed with autism and cerebral palsy, so he's one of those in the 50% kids. He had a whole bunch of problem behaviors, and you're going to see them on videotape. Lots of non-compliance. He's a really good ignorer of adults asking him to do stuff. Expert. Some physical interference, lots of yelling and screaming. He also engaged in severe food refusal behavior and had a very limited number of foods that he would eat, and most of the foods that he ate weren't really the kinds of foods that he should be eating. Cheesies, cookies. I think grilled cheese sandwich was about as healthy as it got. Kieran's family were involved, primarily his mom, Lisa, because she was a full-time stay-at-home mom, right? That was where she was working, and boy, was she working. So she served as the primary interventionist. Colin, the dad, was also involved, but he did work shift work, so he wasn't always home at the time of the routines that we were focusing on. And then finally, we had Alicia, and Alicia was one of the trainees, a deaf woman who had successfully completed the training program. Her post-test score was 91%. She's keener. She used ASL for communication. She had a Bachelor of Education degree, and at the time of the study, her job was working as a family literacy specialist. So she went into family homes where the parents were hearing and the kid was deaf, and really worked with the parents around language and literacy. So that was her day job. This study happened primarily in this family's home. And we targeted 3 routines, and we chose these routines in collaboration with the parents, trying to figure out what would have the greatest impact, what was most important for them. The first one was a transition to bath, which probably doesn't sound like such a big deal, but Kieran was 8. If Kieran was in the living room playing and mom said it's time for your bath, go, the expert ignoring behavior would kick in, and he would ignore her. The only way for her to actually get him to the tub would be to carry him, 8-year-old boy. Mom's getting back injuries. So it was very important for mom that he start going to the bath because it was back injuries or a really stinky child. So, something had to happen. The next one was a transition off of the computer, which was Kieran's most favorite activity, like many children. So telling him it's time to stop and do something else, do anything else, all kinds of problem behavior. And then finally, really the most important routine in terms of health for Kieran had to do with meal eating and getting him to eat. So the third routine was a dinner routine. And so all of the intervention happened within the context of those routines at the family home. Like I said, I did more than just crossing my fingers and hoping for the best. I did provide supervisory support to Alicia. This is the first time that she's actually going into a home and doing this work for real. So theoretically, 91% on the post test. So on paper, she knows what she's doing. But of course, when we're supporting new consultants to go in and provide this kind of support, in whatever setting, whether it's a family setting, a school setting, a community setting, it's really important that those individuals have supervision and have feedback as they start to apply this work. So every week I would meet with Alicia at her place of work, and we would go over what she was doing, and I could give her some advice. So what were we looking at measuring for this study? Certainly problem behavior. So we looked at percentage of intervals of problem behavior, which over time we would hope to go down, right? We also looked at the percentage of routine steps completed. For each of those 3 routines, the mom made a list of, if my son did A, B, C, D, E, F without engaging in problem behavior, I'd consider it successful. And so we took A, B, C, D, E, F, and every time we collected data, we checked off to see whether or not he did those things. And so over time, we would hope that those went up, and he would do more and more. Again, I collected data on social validity, primarily from the mom's perspective. Were the goals, the procedures, and the outcomes of this process of having Alicia come into her home and provide this kind of support, was it important? Was it acceptable? And the other thing that we looked at was goodness of fit. So one of the things as consultants, as behavior people going in particularly to homes, but anywhere where we're providing support, schools, communities, making sure that the kind of support that we're providing fits the context well. That it's not a burden to implement these strategies. That it doesn't take resources away from the family. That it's easy to implement. That it kind of dovetails into their lives nicely, right? Because my job, when I'm working with families, certainly isn't to make their life more challenging. My job is to actually make their life less challenging. So we did some assessment to make sure that the plans were a good fit and that mom really saw them as something doable from her context. So the family-centered PBS process that we implemented really focused on a collaborative partnership between Alicia and really the mom. It was the two of them that did the bulk of the work. Alicia was responsible for creating positive behavior support plans that were individualized for Kieran in this context with his mom, that were really built on the results of a functional assessment, an understanding of why, when mom asks him to go to the bath, does he not do that? Why, when mom asks him to turn off the computer, does he yell and scream? Why, when he sits down at the dinner table and mom puts the family meal in front of him, he freaks out, right? So really understanding the whys behind this and using that information to inform our plan and our strategies. Again, Alicia worked really hard at making sure that her plans were a good fit with family life. And she provided implementation support to the mom. So that meant that Alicia would go in and often model how to implement the plan. So mom would just watch, and Alicia would do it. And then they'd kind of co-implement, and Alicia would coach her. And then as the mom learned how to use the strategies, Alicia provided less and less support until eventually Alicia kind of worked her way out of a job, right? And left mom to do it on her own and would kind of check in first, every couple of days, how's it going? And then once a week, and then every couple of weeks, and until mom's like, hey, yeah, I've got this, we're all good. Okay, so she provided some really good implementation support. And one of the things for Alicia that she needed to do, she sort of snuck into her implementation support, some sign language training for mom as well. Because remember, mom is hearing, and her son is deaf, and mom's trying to learn sign languages. This isn't her first language. And it's a little extra hard. It's not like he's just a typical deaf child, so I'm going to learn how to sign and that's it. She's also got appointments to get fitted for wheelchairs, and she's got physio, and she's got OT, and she's got, right, 1,000,002 other things. And so going to sign language classes weren't always something that worked real well for her. So Alicia also, in her implementation support, would model ASL use to mom and did some ASL teaching. So that was kind of an added bonus. In terms of collecting data, I went in with the video camera every so often, collected some data, threw it onto the computer, and coded it. Most of you don't care much about that. Those of you who are like data nerds can come talk to me later. For the contextual fit assessment, mom filled out a 20-item questionnaire before and after intervention for each routine. So before we started the bath routine, she filled it out. After the bath routine, she filled it out, and so on and so forth. And then at the end of the study, I asked her to fill out the same questionnaire again, keeping in mind all 3 routines so that we could get a sense of the goodness of fit of those plans. She also completed a social validity questionnaire at the end of intervention for each routine. So after she had experienced that process of intervention, she'd complete the questionnaire so that we could get a sense of the level of social validity. Okay? So this study utilized what we call in the fancy research world a single subject, multiple baseline design, and it was replicated across those 3 activity settings. And the fancy measurement strategy is called multiple probe. It just means I went in every so often with the video camera. Let's take a look at the data. So we've got percentage of intervals of problem behavior along here. These are the probe sessions. And we're across 3 routines. So at the top is the bath transition data, followed by the computer transition data, followed by the dinner data. And the point that you really want to pay attention to is between baseline and intervention, baseline and intervention, baseline and intervention. And what you see is that problem behavior was way up high at baseline, and nice and low at intervention, which made me always do the happy dance, thinking that I may graduate someday. And it worked. So nice drop in problem behavior, that reduction maintained throughout the course of the study. And just to give you a sense of averages, average problem behavior during baseline across all of those routines was 61%. So 61% of the time when mom tried to get him to do what she wanted him to do in those 3 routines, 61% of the time he was not behaving well. That dropped to 4% during the initial training phase. That fell to 3% during the maintenance phase. I say any 8-year-old who engages in problem behavior 3% of the time, I don't care who the 8-year-old is, right, they're 8. In terms of steps completed, here we've got our percentage of steps completed here, again for bath, computer, and the dinner routines. And again, you see at the point of intervention, there's a change, and this time we want the change to go up. So you see he didn't do a whole lot, now he's doing a lot. He was sick this day. We'll give him credit for, most of us don't do what we're supposed to do when we're sick. You'll also note here in the computer transition routine, he actually started doing some of the steps. There was a bit of a weird thing that happened in problem behavior too. I was standing there with the video camera. Mom would say, close the computer down. He'd close the computer down. She'd take it away from him. I'd say, thank you very much. At this point in the back of my head, very upset because it's baseline. We should see lots of problem behavior. But I'd step out, I'd get to the car, and my phone would ring, and she'd say, he's having a tantrum right now. So all the problem behavior was happening afterwards. He was reacting to my presence. So we set a video camera up on a tripod before he got home from school, and I went away for coffee. And so again, this is when we had the video camera on the tripod, and he was doing nothing that he was supposed to be doing. And as soon as we implemented the intervention, he started doing what he was supposed to do. And same for dinner. He always did the first couple of steps that involved coming to the table, sitting in his chair, praying with his family. And then, all cooperation stopped as soon as the food was presented. In terms of averages across the routines, at baseline, he was doing 20% of what he was supposed to do. During initial training, that jumped up to 88%. And then during the maintenance phase, that jumped up to 94%. Again, any 8-year-old who does 94% of what he's supposed to do